time for yet another tier list. Hey guys, Otaku here, back with another competitive Yu-Gi-Oh video, and Crossover Breakers is coming out this week as of recording this video, and with it, a new format is upon us. Malice and Ryzeal are definitely expected to be the top dogs of the upcoming format, which take a look at my meta tier list that I uploaded earlier this week. Link will be in the description below, but also just go check out the channel. And with that, the format is expected to form around those two decks, playing around them and also playing against them. And both of those decks, along with many of the other top contending decks, are going to be playing a lot of hand traps. That's right, Snake Eyes may be dying, but hand traps are still very much in the format. So today I'm going to be ranking the best hand traps in the upcoming Crossover Breakers format, from best to just don't play it at all. But before we do jump on into ranking all these hand traps, I have noticed that a great deal of you that watch my videos are not currently subscribed to the channel, and if you like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content, consider subscribing to the channel, liking this video, but also hitting the bell button so you get future notifications of when I upload more videos, so I continue to make videos like this one. But with that, let's jump on into the tier list. All right, so we have pretty much just the basic hand traps. We are only going over hand traps. We are not going to be talking about board breakers in this current tier list. I can do a whole separate video of that. I just feel like hand traps, from what I've seen, not only in my own personal testing, but from other people's testing, hand traps are going to still be very much dominant in the format. A lot of decks are going to be playing 18 plus still, just like they have been in the Snake Eyes format. So we have play every time. These are hand traps you're going to see in almost every deck profile. We have potential. These are hand traps that, like, context based could be very good based on how the format actually turns out. Side deck exclusive. These are hand traps that you will only see in the side deck. You will not see it in the main deck. And if you do see it in the main deck, that person's just probably building wrong, and then don't bother. Hand traps that you probably should not just think about at all. To start is going to be the poster child of the hand traps, which is Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. We're going to put it in every time. Ash Blossom is still very much probably the best hand trap in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Simply because it's the most common form of interaction with Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is adding or special summoning from the deck. And Ash Blossom hits that entirely, so it is just the most common form of it. Ash Blossom can be the difference maker between a winnable game and a game that you're just not touching at all. Now, that being said, in my own personal experience, Ash Blossom doesn't do a lot to Malice specifically. Malice, of course, Red Ransom can add the field spell, so Ash can hit that, and keeping the Malice deck off of Red Ransom also hurts their ability to play around Nibiru specifically. However, if they're playing correctly, they can also just chain block the Red Ransom with, like, Link Decoder, so Ash couldn't hit it anyways. Ash could stop, like, Allure of Darkness, but that's not a once per turn. It could stop the Cheshire Cat effect. It can stop a couple things in Malice, but nothing super impactful minus Red Ransom, which, again, they can chain block. But against Ryzeal, Ash is a lot more powerful because she can stop Ice, she can stop Duo Drive, two things that you kind of want to stop before they are allowed to activate it. However, if my own personal opinion, and we'll talk about it a little later, you're going to want to activate a different hand trap on Ice specifically. Ghost Spell is interesting in this next format because thanks to Malice, we have a lot of cards that banish from the graveyard. We'll be talking about a little bit here in a minute, but Bystials are going to be big in the next format. So I think, like, Bell has potential. Bell is going to be very good against the Malice matchup specifically, so we might see it in, like, some people's side decks against Malice, but at the same time, we'll probably see a different hand trap if you can already see it here on the list. But Bell has potential to be used in other deck lists. Bell can also hit the plug-in spell from Ryzeal. And that's pretty much what we're basing, like, the hand traps here is going to be, like, what can they do to Ryzeal or Malice specifically, since they will be the top dogs of the next format. Next, we're going to talk about Bystials. We are separating Magnemite from the rest of the Bystials, so Jerusalem is going to be representing all the other Bystials, whereas Magnemite is kind of his own league. There's a reason he's limited, because he is the best one of them all. Magnemite can search any dragon when he is summoned, so he can search out another Bystial, he can search out any of the Tenpai cards, which is why he's played in Tenpai. He just instigates a lot more, so Magnemite is in a league of his own. At the same time, though, I think we are going to see a massive rise in Bystials, simply because Bystials are going to be used in Malice specifically. We probably won't see it too much into, like, other decks. We can see probably Bystials being sided in other decks, but some decks could probably use the Bystials to force the Malice banish effects on their own. You can use a Bystial to chain to your opponent's Bystial when they try to banish their Malice monster, because yes, they'll get the monster that they're banishing, but they won't get the Bystial, meaning they're down one body, because Malice tends to use the Bystials as extenders as well. So there is ways to counteract that. I think Bystials are going to be very prevalent in the Crossover Breaker format. They're already very good in the current format against, like, Snake Eye and plenty of other stuff. but I think they're going to see a massive rise because Malice will be playing him in the main deck, and other decks probably will be playing him in the side deck to counter other random decks like branded or rogue decks, but also could possibly see them being used as counterplay to force effects out of Malice or prevent them from extending with their own Bystials. Called by the Grave is going to be, again, a play every time. We're going to be seeing a massive influx of hand traps in the next format, like we do in the current format, and it's a one-of, so if you have the room in the deck for the one-of, might as well just play it. Called by is pretty good against Malice, funny enough, because if they like go Splash Mage try and revive one, you can banish it, and because it's negated for 2 whole turns, they're not going to be able to revive it. So Called By is like really funny in the Malice matchup. It can be somewhat good in the Ryzeal matchup, but like not relevant enough in my personal opinion. It's pretty much here just to counter hand traps. Counter that one hand traps that's going to hurt your deck more than not. We're going to talk about the Cs because there are 2 Cs that are going to be interesting in the next format. So we have Retaliating C and Contact C. Retaliating C is a monster that recently became prevalent in the current format because of Deception and Azamina and how all that interaction works. It's also like a mini macrocosmos in a sense. I kind of want to say with the upcoming format, don't bother with Retaliating C. I think he lived his use for one format exclusively, and it was mainly just for like 1 or 2 YCSs. From there, we haven't really seen him since. Contact C is interesting. I'm going to put him in potential. The reason being, it's Contact C, when he is on the board, your opponent has to use him as link material, Xyz material, or fusion material. Like, you have to use him as material for your next special summon, essentially. If you put this on the board against Ryzeal, they just don't play, essentially, because if you wait till they lock themselves into rank 4s, then hit this on the board, they are just not going to be able to play because he's a level 8 and they play rank 4s, and if they lock themselves in rank 4s, they have no way to level modulate. So this is almost like a weird win against the Ryzeal. They have like possible ways to get it off the board, but nothing concrete. So yeah, I'm going to put Contact C in like a potential. Obviously, if you put this on a Malice board, they're just going to link it away. They don't give a shit about that. They will absolutely enjoy you giving them the body, but there are some like other weird rogue decks you could slap this on the board and it could help. So there are options. Crossout Designator, I'm going to put in play every time. I think we will still see Crossout Designator being played a lot, maybe in the side deck, so you could put it in either one of these tiers. These tiers are pretty vague, but Crossout Designator I think we're going to see a lot of, just simply because everyone's going to be running the same hand traps, and you're going to want to stop them from using those hand traps without preventing yourself from using it. Because if you called by on your turn Ash Blossom and you have Ash in hand, that Ash in your hand is just dead for your opponent's turn. So Crossout Designator helps a little bit more, but at the same time, Crossout Designator requires you to run the hand traps you're trying to stop, which thankfully we all are already running those hand traps. So I think we're going to still see Crossout Designator very prevalent. It's just a matter of can you fit it in the deck or if you put it in the side deck. DD Crow, I think we say don't bother this current format. I think DD Crow, you don't want to banish things out of your opponent's graveyard. Like, the 2 best decks in the format can play around Shifter, so they're going to be able to play around DD Crow. Malice will absolutely love it if you banish their monsters with DD Crow. Malice will very much appreciate that. But also, like, Ryzeal, again, they have plugin which can pull from the banish pile. They don't particularly care. Obviously, DD Crow can stop like a target something in the graveyard. It can disrupt that, but it's like it's not enough. And if I'm going to use anything that's going to do that, I'd rather get a body out of it. So a Bystial would be a lot better. The Psi frame. So we have Gamma and Delta. Obviously, Gamma is a one-of because it is still limited on the ban list. Delta is something that keeps coming in and out of the format. Regardless, I think they are like side deck exclusives. I don't foresee us playing too much of these monsters in the main deck because the Gamma is at least a 2-of essentially because we have to have the driver, whereas Delta could be a 4-of because we have to have driver in the deck as well. Both of these require you running a brick, which is driver. If you open driver, it just feels bad. So it's like side deck exclusive maybe. I could see people running these, like Delta maybe a little less. We have a lot less spells running in the upcoming format, whereas like I guess this could stop the Ryzeal field spell, but we can talk about field spells momentarily. Spooky Dogwood. This card's gonna still kind of be used to exploit like the time rules in current Yu-Gi-Oh! However, I don't foresee it being used all that much. It's not being used a lot lately, so I just think like if we do see it, it's a side deck exclusive. You never main deck this. There's no reason to. But I would almost put this in like the don't bother category. I just think Spooky Dogwood's not really necessary in the current format or the future format at that. Droll Knockbird, I personally am putting this in almost all my decks, but I think it has potential. Droll Knockbird's one of those cards that every format we're just like, yo, Droll's gonna be insane in this format, and then he does okay. Droll, again, in this upcoming format's interesting because Droll Knockbird, if with the right situation, can hurt Ryzeal a lot. If you Droll them on just like the first add, then you stop them from adding any further extenders, you stop them from using Duo Drive, you stop them from a lot. It doesn't kill their turn, but it stops them from having like an insane board, and that's kind of what Droll does. Droll is good for preventing boards from getting out of hand. Now, Droll doesn't do anything to Malice. Obviously, Droll, if they play wrong or they sequence wrong and they activate like a lure right out the gate and they don't get the field spell and you Droll them, then they're not getting the field spell. So a Malice player has to play properly, sequence properly, so that way they don't just get murdered by Droll, because if you play into Droll, you probably won't have a great board with a Malice, but if you just avoid Droll, then you're fine. Like, and the deck does very well avoiding around Droll. And if you get to the field spell or you open the field spell, you're fine. You don't care about Droll at all. Mulch Armies. I don't know what you want me to say with these. These cards are cracked still. Like, so as we have noticed, the Mulch Armies are not as good as we gave them credit for. Fuelos is still crazy. It's a very strong card. However, it's not the max C that we were all predicting it to be. There is ways to play around this card. It is not super crazy. There are a lot of pro players that are just kind of like, yeah, this deck doesn't really need it. This deck doesn't want to play it. Because we're learning that Fuelos requires your opponent to pop off. And at least in Snake Eye format, we don't want them popping off. So we just decided that some decks don't need Fuelos, whereas like all decks were using max C back in the day. Perulia is still a very good card. Perulia actually hurts the Ryzeal matchup a lot because they are summoning from their hand a lot. So I think both these are still like play every time. So if you have these cards, you have money to buy these cards, like play them. Maybe not every time. So I almost want to put them in potential because it is very much deck based, but also like money based, of course. This Perulia is like almost $100 on its own, and then Fuelos I think it's like $115 on its own. That's like $600-$700 just between these two. So I'll put them in potential because not every deck wants to play these. So fair enough. If anything, I would put like Fuelos in play every time. Ryzeal will be playing this card. Malice doesn't have to, nor do they really want to, but like they could. But like Perulia, probably see Perulia in the side deck, honestly. Like Perulia is pretty much an every time category, but we will see it in the side deck more than the main deck. Imperm, play it every time. I don't know what to say. Target negation is still very, very powerful in the upcoming format. It plays around talents. It plays around thrust. It is just a very powerful card. The column negate, you can catch your opponent off guard if they're not paying attention. But target negation is like very strong. If you stop the duo drive with Imperm, like it's not, you know, a winning strategy, but it helps. Malice, if they're not playing correctly, if they're not playing around it, not respecting it, Imperm can punish a lot because a lot of their effects are ignition effects, not on summon. So Imperm, still a very powerful card. The Dominuses. These cards are crazy. We already knew Impulse was crazy. Impulse is a play every time. If you can play it in your deck, play it. Ryzeal cannot play Impulse simply because they are a bunch of light monsters, so they cannot play Impulse, but they can play Surge. I think Surge has potential still. I think both of these actually are like, if you can play them, play them. They are just very good cards. They are basically like Ash Blossom, but not a monster, so they play around talents. So I think if you can play these cards, play them. These are just very, very strong cards. Now the issue is that you got to be proper with your sequencing, because if you play these cards too early, you might cut off some of your other hand traps. Like if you are playing Droll with Impulse and you activate Impulse from your hand first, then you can't activate Droll for the rest of the duel. Same with Ghost Mourner and whatever else. So it's like you got to be very smart with how you use these cards, but if you can play them, make sure you are playing them. Lancia is going to be a side deck, but this card is going to be everywhere. This is going to be the counterplay card to almost all Malice, but also Ritual Beast will still be very much in the format, and Ritual Beast is going to pay for Malice's crimes. Lancia is going to be everywhere. Ritual Beast cannot play around Lancia, whereas Malice has lines to play through it. It's not very good, but it is there. But Lancia is going to be nuts in the upcoming format. and we will see it in almost every side deck to counter out Malice. Skullmeister, just don't bother. There's very little graveyard effects in the upcoming format, minus like Snake Eyes will still be around because we don't have a ban list yet. We will probably have a ban list like late December, early January. But we don't have any graveyard focused decks, so like Skullmeister is not really that great, and even when we did have graveyard effects, Skullmeister still wasn't that great. Ghost Mourner is still a very high potential card. Ghost Mourner is just like good against Malice in some weird way because it is target negation. You can stop like the Red Ransom from activating her stuff. If she tries to chain block, you can just stop like a bunch of other special summons. The problem is they are trigger effect, or sorry, ignition effects. So if they can get it off the board and revive it, they can still use it. But overall, like Ghost Mourner has potential still be very good. Nibiru, I'm going to put in potential, and if we do see him, I think he'll be mainly in the side deck. The reason being is Nibiru just doesn't feel like enough in the upcoming format. I have been playing a bunch of Malice, I've been playing a bunch of Ryzeal, and Nib punishes. By the time Nib is ready to punish those decks already have all the pieces they need unless the pilot is not very good. Obviously, like, Nib hurts, quote-unquote, Malice more, because if they are not playing correctly or they don't have the field spell, they can't play around it. If they don't have the trap cards, they can't play around it. But by the time they are in Nib range, they should have one or the other, if not both. So I just feel like Nib is kind of iffy in the upcoming format, but it is a card I think that still needs to be respected in the upcoming format. So I think it has potential to still be seeing play, maybe just because people are going to be running 20 plus hand traps still. So it's like, hey, I need one more hand trap to get like 20 plus, and then it's like, oh, Nibiru is still available. Nibiru is like the 15th best hand trap. So I think Nibiru is a card that we still need to respect, but the moment we start respecting it, you'll see less play, and then when we stop respecting it, it'll come back. So it's a vicious cycle with Nibiru. Ghost Ogre, again, has potential. Ghost Ogre is like, we've had like 6 formats in a row now where we're like, oh, Ghost Ogre goes hard in this format. Ghost Ogre can hurt Centurion. Oh, Ghost Ogre can hurt the Deception. Ghost Ogre can hit all of these other traps and back row and monster effects. Like, Ghost Ogre is insane, and then Ghost Ogre does nothing. Ghost Ogre was predicted to do good against Voiceless. It did nothing against Voiceless, like, at all. We've had like several formats now where Ghost Ogre is like iffy, and so because of that, I don't really know. I think Ghost Ogre has potential simply because there are some interesting situations where it's like Malice, again, they have all these trigger or ignition effects. So they have to activate it on, after they summon it. So they just go like, oh, Splash Mage effect. And they'll be like, okay, Ogre. So they still get the monster back from Splash Mage, but now they're down 2 bodies essentially because Splash Mage is equal to 2 bodies. So it's like Ghost Ogre has some weird interactions with certain decks. Ghost Ogre could like get the Duo Drive off the board after he activates it. So it's like 1 less Xyz, but Duo Drive never ends with a material on board usually, so it's like it doesn't do a whole lot. The Ghost Ogre could hurt the field spell in a weird way against Ryzeal. It can't hit Malice at all, but the possibilities are there. We'll just have to see how Ghost Ogre turns out. Phantasme, I'm putting it in like side deck, but it's also one of those cards that has like potential. So we are moving heavily into a link centered format, pretty much where we're already at, but Phantasme is like a worse version of Foolos at this point. But the Malice cards get into like link 5, so it's like you can draw like 5 cards and then discard 1 or something like that. So it's like there's some weird situations where Phantasme can be really pretty good. But if we do see Phantasme, he's going to be in the side deck. He will not be in the main deck. We're going to see a lot of Shifter. I think Shifter, if the player is smart, is putting Shifter in the side deck. There is 0 reason to have Shifter in main deck in the upcoming format because the last thing you want to do is activate Shifter and you're going against a Malice player. Shifter will be put in the side deck for Malice, it'll be put in the side deck for Ryzeal, it'll be put in the side deck for Ritual Beast, it'll be put in the side deck for Flu if Flu comes back. Like, any deck that can play Shifter is going to be putting it in the side if they're smart, because again, you don't want to activate this when going against Malice. It'll also be in Tempai. We're going to see a lot of Shifter, like a lot of Shifter. So because of that, yeah, this card's going to be crazy. Potential is Vitos. This is a hot take, but I think Vitos has potential in the upcoming format. The reason being is we have 2 decks that really like their field spell. If they activate Malice and Underground, you chain Vitos and get it off the board before they can get the banish from deck or graveyard off. If they activate the field spell for Ryzeal, you just get it off the board. That's one less really annoying interaction from your opponent. Vydos is interesting in the upcoming format, and I think it's a card that we should all be kind of thinking about, but like, you know, don't just be like, oh, this is going to be a cracked. I think it has potential. So because of that, just kind of keep it on your radar. If you don't have Vydos, maybe pick them up just in case. Veiler is going to be also like potential. I think Veiler is still very much good in the upcoming format because target negation is just a good form of interaction. The issue is unlike Imperm, which these two are basically the same. The difference is Imperm is a trap, so it plays around the effects of talents and thrust, which means Veiler does not. So, and also because of that, if you're playing Veiler with Impulse, then you activate Impulse, then Veiler's just a dead card, whereas Imperm is not. So I think it's just like Veiler is kind of iffy in the upcoming format, but like if you need to play it still, go ahead and play it. Winter Cherries, don't bother. There's no like relevant card in the current format that everybody's playing in the extra deck. There's no reason to play this unless you're playing a deck that focuses around it, but then that's just kind of weird. So it's like, just don't bother with this card. It's a good card, but there's nothing to focus about in the current upcoming format that this would be impactful on. And then the last two cards, these aren't technically hand traps, but they interact with hand traps in a way that I want to talk about them a little bit more in this video as opposed to a board breaker, but we'll talk about them in a board breaker video as well if necessary, is Thrust and Talents, because these two cards punish hand traps. Thrust and Talents, I think, will both be in the play every time. I think both of them are just necessary in a format where hand traps are being played left and right, 21 plus hand traps in every deck almost. Thrust is just going to be probably in the side deck, if I have to be honest. We'll see Thrust in the side deck and probably Talents in the main deck, but Thrust is going to be used to obviously put your trap cards in the back row, like D-Barrier, which is just going to auto-win against Ryzeal. And also just plenty of other traps, like Different Dimension Ground, if you feel like that's necessary. But also Thrust has interactions with Malice that you can set your Malice traps if you can for some reason not get to them because they negate your other stuff. So Thrust has cool interaction with Malice, whereas Talent, obviously, Talent's just good. Look at your opponent's hand, so maybe you can stop any further interruption coming your way, take a card to help you break a board, draw two cards if your hand was really bad. Yeah, both these cards are going to see a significant amount of play even in the upcoming format because they punish hand traps, but also they both kind of do really good in like mid-range formats. So, but that is it for my hand trap tier list, everybody, for the crossover breaker format. Let me know what you all think in the comments down below. Maybe I missed a hand trap that wasn't mentioned, but also don't forget to leave a like on this video, but also subscribe to the channel if you're not already and you like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content. But with that, I'll see you all in the next video. See ya.